I'm glad to see everybody out here. It looks like a lot of people. We could all learn a little bit about how to, prioritize our wellness so that we can enjoy our careers and be successful in our careers. And so I'm really excited to see everything that Dr. Lundsteen has to say. Um, and I just wanted to let you, before we get started, I wanted to let you guys know that the graduate school is also starting a mental health and wellness initiative. And so just keep your keep your eyes peeled for more information on that. We're developing a survey to try and sort of figure out where everybody is at in the graduate school, and so I'll be hounding some of you about that in the future. But today we have Dr. Natalie Lundsteen here, and she is the Assistant Dean for Career and Professional Development at UT Southwestern Graduate School. She got her PhD in education from Oxford University in 2011 and is an assistant professor of psychiatry as well at UT Southwestern. And research-wise, you're interested in student training and workplace learning and development of professional expertise, and actually wrote a book on research, a career guide for scientists. And I checked out some of your blog entries in the Carpe Careers blog.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was very enjoyable. I recommend looking into those.
Talk about that a little bit. Good.
Very cool. So today she's going to be talking to us about, obviously, not just surviving, but also, succeeding and being positive and and healthy in whatever career path PhD takes.
Yes.
So I'll just hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. Can you hear me all right? Because I do not have a pocket, I thus am tethered to the podium, so I cannot do talk show style and move about the audience and talk to you, so you guys are safe for a little bit. I am very excited to be here. I have worked advising students and postdocs on career concerns for over 20 years now. And I'm using sort of my own skills and strengths in the job that I do day to day, because the mechanics of getting through a PhD and figuring out what you're going to do next are pretty straightforward, but a lot of it has to do with attitude. And how many of you guys are familiar with Gallup's Strengths Finder? Anyone ever done that? If you're not, well, we'll talk about it in a little bit. But my number 2 strength is positivity. So I can't help myself that everything I do, I'm like, okay, this is really crappy. How can we look at this in a different way and survive? So that's how I came up with this talk. And it's been presented different places. I gave it at AAAS with some colleagues, some of whom I'll mention during the talk. I gave it at Stanford. I gave it at University of Melbourne last year. And it's kind of becoming like my road show. And I think eventually I need to do this kind of like Tony Robbins with like music and lights and everybody, your PhD. But it's just my hope that today, while you're eating your pizza, you take a few moments now to just think about life, think about where your career is headed. I'll give you some pretty positive tips and resources to take with you. And then, again, I want to make sure you're here. You wouldn't be here if you didn't know about the awesome resources that you have available to you here. But, take advantage of things that are here for you with what I'm going to tell you about now. So, all right, let me ask first, who's here and what are we going to talk about? Who's here? That's what I'm going to ask about first. How many of you guys are grad students and postdocs and junior faculty, research scientists, others? Okay, excellent. So it's a good solid mix of grad students and postdocs, which is great because that's what this talk is pitched for. So here we go. Oh, that was supposed to like fly in one at a time. I grew up before PowerPoint was invented, so Anyway. We're going to talk about how did you guys end up here getting your PhD? What can you be? Where can you go with this PhD? And towards the end of my talk, really, I'm going to talk about making sure that we survive the trip, okay? Okay, so before I do anything else, you mentioned my blog. So I'm a member of a professional society of people who do graduate career advising, people who work with PhDs and postdocs around the world. And Sina is a member, and so that's one of the reasons that we know each other. And we together as a society write a blog or a weekly column in Inside Higher Ed, which is again, a fantastic resource for anyone looking for PhD careers, but I'll talk about that in a second. And just last week, I wrote a piece about staying motivated when your job is kind of getting you down. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that piece because you'll notice down here in the corner of my slide, there's a little picture. We'll come to it in just a second. But I've decided that I'm going to put this little picture, and this is going to be sort of my totem for this talk going forward. So Lulu, she's the CIA dog. Who has heard of Lulu? Okay, can I ask one of you guys to tell me about, you're smiling, yellow sweater guy. Tell us about Lulu.
So I'm pretty sure Lulu was getting trained for like bomb sniffing.
Bomb sniffing, yep.
But she technically failed.
Yeah.
Her thing, and now she's a happy dog because she works with the CIA.
Yeah. Yes. And this photo, look at that face. Okay, that's not, kind of pixelated, but that face is what I see pretty much every day around the grad school, right? And I'm not saying you guys all need to stop sniffing bombs and move to a totally different career, but when things are getting you down, and that's the topic that I wrote about last week in Carpe Careers and Inside Higher Ed, was, okay, take some time to figure out, why are you unhappy? What is this malaise? Is it part of a bigger shift in thinking, or is it just maybe that you need a little break? And there's been like hashtag I am Lulu, we are all Lulu. Everyone, it gets a little bit down in their job, but I love her, because like here she is, years of training and expertise and skill. I mean, retrieving is in her name, right? So for a lot of you that have been doing science since you were, I don't know, 14, 15, 16 years old, right? This is your training and your expertise, but then some days you're just like, I can't. So I want you to think about Lulu, and I've put her on every single slide as we go through, because where is she now? She's in a backyard chasing squirrels. So she's found a way to use her transferable skills in a new career. So I love Lulu. I just love her. Okay, so let me talk to you a little bit about the PhD. People who don't have one might say things like, if you're smart enough to earn a PhD, you're probably smart enough not to pursue one, right? You all know the realities of the job market. Let me ask now too, how many of you guys are actively job searching right now? Okay, engaged. So those of you that are, I may call on you for a little bit of help, because this talk is going to veer into sort of the and beyond your PhD. Because sometimes when you're really stuck, figuring out what comes next is a good way to sort of get over any obstacles or disappointments that you might have. But I firmly believe that our PhDs have value, right? That we, again, like I said, you are like the retriever who has spent years, you have this innate talent and skill and strength at what you're doing. But you also have many other talents and skills and strengths, so maybe you're going to continue on the path that you're on, but you may also need to peek out there and look at other paths that you may need to take. And having the PhD, it makes a difference. It makes us, shall I say, even a little bit special. Okay, so turning specifically to not necessarily just job search, but for those of you, because there's not a lot of you who are actively job searching right now, but in your career or in thinking about your career, share a little bit with me now some of the challenges that you have faced, either going forward in your career, thinking about what comes next. And since I'm not going to talk, I'm going to move out here so I can hear you guys chat. So challenges along the way with the day-to-day of being a science PhD.
You need to talk to the microphone. And anyone has a question, please talk to the microphone. We are recording this session.
It's on? Oh, okay. Great. So please help me out here. Please.
Balancing time between doing science and looking for a job.
Yeah.
Time management.
Balance time management, absolutely. Do you have one? Okay. You're just anyone? If I look at you, I'm going to give you the microphone. Okay. I do feel like a talk show host.
I'm not actively looking right now, but I know that this will happen. Finding a place that you like, that likes you, and is hiring right now.
Yes,
That
sums it up, right? It's like that Venn diagram of, do I like it? Can I use my skills there? Do they like me? Are they hiring right at this moment? Issues of timing. Anyone else? Things that have come up in your career or in your career search? Yes.
Your skills are very specific and narrow to the industry area.
Thank you. That was a perfect segue, because then when I talk about transferable skills, that works perfectly. Did you have something you wanted to say? She said it. Okay, excellent. Let me show you the slide that sort of sums all this up, because your concerns and challenges are not uncommon. All right, I'm not going to get feedback, I hope, if I put this down here. Okay. So yes, that we all know the landscape for PhD jobs, particularly academic tenure track. It's challenging. Let's put it that way. There's no single place that you can go to find jobs. Maybe academia or science, bench science is all you know. Exhausting. I am so feeling that this week. Or that whole thing about it seems relentless and unknown. And something that I hear a lot from PhDs too is not only, Natalie, this is unknown. I'm anxious about, I don't know what's going to happen, but I also don't know how long I'm going to feel this anxious. So there's that on top of it. Being overqualified and underqualified at the same time, like trying to position yourself for exactly the right place at the right time. It can be very solitary. So that's why it's awesome to come along to things like this. Even if you don't talk to anyone here, you are here interacting with other humans. And I know most of you are in labs with other humans, but it's a different kind of togetherness when you come to events like this. Finding out what your options are. Sometimes people say like, oh my God, I know I have to network, but I don't know anyone to network with. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and then just trying to figure out time. So, and this is another thing I want to talk about too. Like people say like, oh, well, she just fell into that career, or she just had that lucky chance. That's not true. So common themes around the world with PhDs, and it can be deflating. Again, with the Lulu face, that is the Lulu face in balloon form, right there. Okay, so again, it can be really complicated, right? How do you make yourself then? Yes, we're at the top of the pyramid here in terms of our very specific expertise and knowledge, but we're not competing with someone who's exactly like us, right? You're competing with people who might be sort of similar to you, but no one is exactly like you. So how do you differentiate yourself? How do you figure out where to go? Right place at the right time. That, in fact, was the very first article I wrote for Inside Higher Ed for that blog, was understanding that because as a PhD, the kind of jobs that we might match up to are so rare, it's not like you're saying, oh, I'm going to actually defend my PhD in June, and that perfect job for me is going to be available June 15th, right? So it's that whole anxiety level of the timing, which you cannot control it, so you just have to learn how to ride the wave. And something that I like to think about, I talked about my positivity, and I'm not saying all of you have to be Pollyanna positive, but there is a way to reframe a lot of the behaviors and thoughts that you may have. And I'm sure you guys have heard of the phrase imposter fears, right? Or imposter syndrome, I think they call it. I call it imposter fears, because it's not a syndrome. It's just a thing. It's just a fear or an anxiety that you have. And so that's what I'm talking about, reframing, thinking about things in a different way. And that's my goal today, to give you some things that will help you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the career search, because that's my area of expertise right now. But I will get into some of the stuff about balance and being comfortable with where you are, being comfortable with the uncomfortable. But for me, I think having tools and having a focus and a plan can give you that confidence that you need. And something that is new to a lot of scientists, and I love one of you guys said this about knowing sort of your skills and what you're good at and what you like. Yeah, you know you're really good at the science that you're doing, but what else are you good at, and what do you prefer? Do you prefer working in teams? Do you prefer living in a certain part of the world or the United States? Do you have others who depend on you, a family, a spouse, children? So you can look at all your different options, but you also have to understand yourself. And part of this search and exploration process will build your network to set you up for success. So here it is, really. This slide is pretty much everything I do in a nutshell. And if there's any takeaway that you have today, it's sort of this. Like, if you know yourself, which is that first bullet point, if you know the different kinds of career areas that you can go into, and you can figure those out researching them online on the web, talking to people in person, or serendipity, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute and talk about it. No, I think I'll talk about it right now. We have a phrase in career counseling. I learned this when I worked at Stanford, because many, many years ago when I started working in career work, I was at Stanford University and I was the director of internships. So I didn't start out working with PhDs, but I definitely always was working with PhDs and postdocs. But my specialty was with internships. And I learned about a phrase called planned happenstance. And it's perfect, because the perfect job for you does not fall from the sky. But yet, I would hear students in panels talking about how, well, and then I was just really lucky to get this job at the World Health Organization in Switzerland. And no, you weren't really lucky to get it. You went to a career fair, or you went to a public service event and met an alum who worked there who told you about the internship opportunity. It did not fall randomly from the sky. So serendipity plays a part, but it's not going to be random serendipity. I want to tell you, too, that don't limit yourself. Be open to anything, even things you think you might already know. You know, if someone says the word sales to you, you might cringe inside. But do you really know what that means? You know, could it be something you could be interested in? If you don't know, if it's a question mark, you owe it to yourself to just be open and explore. And the book that I wrote, here's a copy, and someone's going to get a copy of this today. We were going to call it Flux, my co-authors and I, because careers are constantly fluxing and adapting and moving and morphing. So, and it's sort of a scientific term, but we ended up calling it research, because you are constantly searching and researching throughout your life, always exploring, always reassessing. You are never, it's not like a video game, like you're just going to get to one level and yay, you know, there's always going to be something coming on, because even when you eventually retire, you got to figure out what you're going to do with yourself in your retirement. So it never ends, so you might as well get used to it. So I will say to you that if time is one of the concerns that you have to make a commitment to yourself. This is just like dieting or taking better care of yourself or exercise. It has to come from within to say, if I'm going to get started on my job search, I have to make time for these activities. And these activities can be anything, whatever might be important to you right now. Again, be open to possibility. Don't close yourself off. And know that clarity about careers comes over time. What that means is that you can't know everything about everything, right? You can start methodically looking at some of the most typical careers that life scientists might go into, and I'll talk to you about some resources for that, and you can work your way through that list methodically. But just reading a website or reading some documents that someone says, or even looking at someone's LinkedIn profile doesn't come close to the single best resource, which is people. So here is a chance to win a prize. So the first person who knows what the next slide is and puts their hand up gets a prize. Oh, shoot, I messed it up. It's not this one. Okay, never mind. Sorry, I added in a slide. We'll get there. Okay, so just hold on to that. That's some excitement to wait for. So what paths do PhDs follow? There's so much out there right now. People who do what I do, it has exploded. 5 years ago, there were about 100 people in the United States doing graduate career advising. Right? As of today, I'm the secretary of the professional association that Sina and I belong to. There are 380 people around the world now doing what I do. And maybe more, right? More coming in. My own office, I started, it'll be 4 years ago in January with just me. And now I have 3 people. Right? UCSF, for example, has 30 people doing what I do. So this is, this is a thing. So where am I going with this point? You can figure out what paths all PhDs follow. There's plenty of stuff out there for you. But you also have to parallel that with what path do I want to follow. So I use a lot of metaphors with people, like stepping stones is one, or I talk about your first career is not your forever career. And so you're not going to just stay here for your whole life. I talk about lily pads, for an example. You're a frog, you need to get across the river. You're not going to just do one giant leap because you'll probably end up in the water. So you have to, or chess game might be another metaphor that you can use. So again, to put a little bit of calm around it, wherever you're going next, don't put a lot of pressure or stress on yourself because it's not going to be forever, right? Even tenure track. I know you guys know. Think of how many academics you know that haven't got tenure and moved, or did get tenure and moved. You see what I'm saying? Like that in some people's minds is the one thing, it's just a linear path and you can't get out of it. But you can, even in the most linear leap across the river, or whatever that guy's doing there, things that you can do. So talk to you a little bit about just thinking too that when you look at this matrix and think about things that are important to you, right? And there are exercises and things that you can do to delve into this more quickly, right? I'm not going to ask you to do this right now because I have a lot of things I want to tell you more about. But what is going to be important to you? Maybe it's something in this quadrant. Maybe it's something about I need to go live in Seattle, or it's really important to me to do X or Y. So you're going to have to think about, where's my little circle? Is that where you're going to end up? Or, come on, or is that what's going to happen to you? And it's going to be different for everyone in this room, and it's going to be fluxing, continually with you as you go. And the more that you learn, the more that you can decide, actually, the environment is much more important to me than making a lot of money. Or maybe one of your values and priorities is money. Maybe it's because of student loans, and that can help you think about like, okay, what kind of environment can I work in where I might get forgiven with my student loans? You see the thinking, that these are the kind of things, the more you learn, this will shift as you go. So, I think I have one more circle. This will not happen for a very long time. I would say, I'm getting close to 50 now. I'm pretty close to that right now, right? Like, I'm not from Texas. I don't think, I would have chosen to live in Texas, but so I might be a little bit out of that quadrant, but I'm pretty balanced now. But it's taken me a while to figure out where I'm going. And I do this for a living. Like I'm thinking all the time, like, am I balanced? Am I using my skills, my strengths, my talents? So, but I didn't start doing this as early as you guys are. So maybe you can get to this balance point early, but just know that it won't happen. If it does happen, it'll be like an awesome win the lottery situation for you coming right out of grad school or your postdoc. So again, just kind of be cool with this and know that this is something a lot of PhDs are going through. So where are you going to start with doing this sort of research of options and then figuring out about self? So how many of you guys belong to a professional society? ASBMB, ASCB, SFN, right? I hope everyone does, or at least AAAS. You guys heard of AAAS? So what's amazing is that the professional societies are now starting to do a lot of career exploration and support on their websites. Join while you're a student or postdoc. Trainee memberships are generally pretty cheap. Who's heard of Versatile PhD? Okay. Good. So it's a website where you can go. They have a STEM side and a humanities social science side to help you explore careers. They have online forums where you can chat with people or read chats that have happened. And they also have a lot of virtual career panels that you can archive back and look through the last 10 years. And real people have participated in these panels and you can look at them and read about them. BioCareers, who's heard of BioCareers? Okay, so it's a website specifically for graduate life scientists. So that's a place to start. And generally when someone comes to my office and says, Natalie, how do I start just figuring out what kinds of jobs I might do? I go to Versatile PhD and BioCareers with them because when I talked about that linear working your way through the different buckets or silos of careers that life scientists might go into, that's where we start. My IDP, so this is run, good, some of you have heard of this. It's a great tool. We actually require our grad students and postdocs to complete an IDP, and we use the My IDP tool, but anyone can use it. It's free. It's on Science Careers/AAAS, and there's a way that you can answer questions about your skills and values, and it matches you up to Science Careers. Now, it doesn't match you with every possible career, and it does tend to skew for most people pretty heavily to research, but it's there and it's one of many tools. Yesterday, I connected with the founder of a UK-based company firm website called Jobs on Toast, and I didn't have time to put his diagram in, but if you just were to Google Jobs on Toast PhD jobs, he came up with this awesome matrix that sort of helps people understand same and different career paths that you can go into in this little 2x2 matrix with a PhD. And he's more social science and humanities focused, but nonetheless, it's just ways, if you got to start big picture thinking and then move your way down to a couple career paths that are very likely for you. You've got to start big picture and work your way through. So you can also research online. Right? It's an easy thing. You can do it in your pajamas. You can look at job postings. You can Google and pray, like PhD jobs for neuroscientists or neuroscience PhD jobs. again, the Google and Pray method is not as good as using some of these others in the first bullet point, but they're there for you. And I would say LinkedIn. Oh, Sina, I'm sorry. I was going to ask you if I could get online and show my LinkedIn, but never mind. We won't worry about that right now. We can? Okay. So I would love to show you guys one tip. And Sina is a LinkedIn master. So if you haven't been to one of his LinkedIn sessions, please do. So yes. Yeah. Yeah, because I want to talk to you guys about, let's see if we can get in there. I'll take the microphone and keep talking. I think my next slide is the LinkedIn. That talking to people who, or not even talking to them yet, like phase one will be just looking at LinkedIn as, and if I can use yours or mine, whatever's easiest to get into. I want to show them the alumni search tool. How many of you guys are familiar with the LinkedIn alumni search tool? So a couple of you guys are. Okay, good. So it's worth me going through this malarkey of getting in there to show you. Okay, so that you can find people using LinkedIn. It's like a database, a research database, and we are all researchers, so we should know how to do this. Thanks. All right, hold on. I'm going to come back to this. Let me just show you this really quickly. Too much technology. Hold on, let me make sure that I'm... We'll go to, whoop, dang it. Okay. All right, so LinkedIn. I'm going to show you guys some LinkedIn, but I'm going to hold on just a second. I think I will go with my train of thought that I have with this. So, and as you're looking at people, oops, microphone. As you're looking at people through LinkedIn or others, keep track of it somehow, right? What if you are good at keeping Excel files or some kind of record of what you're doing, because you can't start looking for a job or thinking about what comes next when you're done with what you're doing now. You have to do some low-level investigation thinking, even if it's like 5 minutes a week for those of you that are maybe younger grad students starting out. But that will, again, calm some of the anxiety of making you feel like, I am not stuck here. I have options. I could leave anytime. I think a lot of that too comes into play when you think like, yeah, there are jobs for PhDs out there. There are people who are happy and thriving in their lives in all kinds of career areas. And keeping a list of it now, even if it's like a perfect dream job, you know what? If you're not going to be finishing for another 3 years, maybe that job will come open again in 3 years. Or maybe a similar job to that can be found or created somewhere else. So what I'm saying is, even if you're not actively looking now, go ahead and start looking at job postings. Go ahead and start looking at the LinkedIn profiles of people and their job titles so you know what to look for when it is time. So, just go on here. Let me run through this really quickly, just talking about places where you can go to find jobs. And when I say find jobs, it doesn't necessarily mean find jobs to apply to them. That would be great, right? If you're actively looking, yes, go to job boards. But I hope you guys all know that only about 10% of most jobs in the world are found through applying to an advert or a posting. The rest comes through, networking. So, but there are jobs that are posted, and I get daily alerts from science. I get weekly alerts from higher ed jobs where I've set up parameters for myself. Again, I'm not actively job searching. I love my job, but I want to know what's going on in my field. I want to know who's leaving Yale. If someone takes a job someone left from Yale and went to Dartmouth, I'm like, oh, I wonder who will come in at Yale, which, so there will be movement within the sector that I work in. But for those of you that are exploring new sectors, this helps you sort of figure out like the kinds of jobs that might be posted and where, what those titles might be, and you might get a sense of the sort of timing and cycles of it too by saying like, wow, because you all know the academic job market cycles starting in August, right? It's an August to August cycle. But if you're looking, let's say, at primarily undergraduate institutions for teaching, you may come to the conclusion, which is pretty true, that they tend to hire more throughout the year, not just in that August cycle, right? And where are the institutions where these kinds of jobs are? And that's just one example that hopefully you can use with others. So again, back to the professional societies, which are great at posting jobs. But again, these boards, they're aggregate and they sometimes take from each other. Like BioCareers, I don't know that any jobs on that site are even live or active, but it's great for a research tool. For those of you that are interested in the business or finance side of science, DOC is Dropout Club, and again, these are resources that I'm sure Sina can tell you about, and probably has a website that has a lot of these links and information. So I'm just sort of giving you a bird's eye view of some of this. But LinkedIn can be fantastic for joining groups, for just looking for jobs, because once you create a profile on LinkedIn, LinkedIn will suggest jobs for you based on whatever your scientific expertise may be. And of course, you can go to you can go to Genentech's website, you can go to the University of Michigan's website and see if they're hiring and what they've posted. But you've got to be a little bit measured about this, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Okay, so this is finally, I think this is okay, I really need to remember this better. But don't put your cart before the horse. You need to before you start going out there and just applying for jobs or looking randomly at jobs, you need to link that horse with the cart, knowing your own self and the things that are important to you along in parallel with the kind of jobs options that you have. So, we talk a lot. These questions came up with a friend who co-presented this talk with me a couple years ago about why do most scientists start this job search process like just shotgunning? We call it the shotgun approach. They're just like randomly, because it has occasionally worked in science, right? That these are some results of how different variables can be adjusted to come up with results. But career development is not science, so it generally works better to have a more measured, planned approach. So instead of you think when you sort of shoot out like that, you're going to get that, but really you don't come anywhere near the target, right? Jobs, you'll just end up finding, again, I talked about serendipity, but it's got to be planned serendipity, planned happenstance. So, and a lot of times people will put all their eggs in one basket. That would be the academic basket. So I'm telling you to be sure that you know how competitive the job market is and be thinking about other options for you. So again, you can read all you want on the fantastic websites that I've told you about. You can look through LinkedIn, but the best way to really figure out about different kinds of careers is talking to people. And now, whoever's the first person to raise their hand will get a prize, if you know what this next slide is. Yes. Nobody? Tell us. Soylent Green. It's people. It's a very old movie, but it was just making me think about the fact that it's people. Like, seriously, if there's one bit of information that I can give people about getting a job or finding their next step, it's talk to people. So I'm going to, what's your name? Kevin. I'm going to give Kevin a copy of a fantastic book called Networking for Nerds. It is a great book written by a physicist. And so there you go. So network away, my nerdy friend. So networking is something that, how many of you like networking? Most of the time. How many of you are, how many of you just absolutely no networking? How many of you know that you have to do it? Right, okay. You do, and you can't network at home in your pajamas. We had a reception a couple of weeks ago. We partnered with UT Dallas, which is, 15 miles away from us, and it was so great. Grad students and postdocs from both coming together. There was just going to be great food and just a chance for people to practice these social conversations. No, 12 people came from my grad school, 20 from UT Dallas, which has like 30,000 grad students. So, yeah. You can't network at home. People would love to network at home in their pajamas, but it doesn't work that way. However, you can network a little bit online, and you have to talk to people because you can read about all these great career paths, but you really need to figure out what it's really like and what is really needed. So Tom, who has co-presented this, Tom is a geneticist from Yale. He's currently doing the same role as Sina and I have at Sloan Kettering. And this is his chart, and it is for real. And basically, he said for 100 jobs that he did not do any networking, he only got 2 interviews, right? And he actually said, **, networking helped him get those 2 interviews and subsequent job offer. All right, but then there were 19 other jobs that he did do some networking for, and 14 of them, so a 73% success rate, he ended up getting an interview. So do you see that the networking can, okay, that's a whole other hour. That's a whole half day. That's a day session on what networking can be. But again, I don't know what more proof you guys need to know. So this is some reasons why it's important, which you may or may not know about. Having those informational chats, and I call them informational chats because in Britain, they called it a chat instead of an interview. And I don't know about you guys, but I would much rather have a chat with someone than an interview, no matter what side of the desk I'm on. So if you have an informational chat with someone, you can find out maybe they are looking to hire. Oh, Natalie, we might be creating a position in our office in the next, year or two, or the next 6 months, or whatever. Or they can forward your information on. And in the corporate world, not the higher education world, and even then, sometimes not always in the corporate world, but if I give your name to HR and say, hey, I had a chat with Sina, and they go and find Sina in the database and put a little asterisk next to his name and say Natalie Lundsteen endorsed or referred. If Sina gets hired in my company, I might get $1,000, $5,000, whatever. Why? Because it's about $10,000 per person for HR to go out there, create a job posting, market it, post it, go through everything. You've already been vetted and endorsed, if that makes sense. So people will talk to you because they want to help, but they might also be talking to you for a purely mercenary reason, and that's totally fine. And that may help some of you. There's a fantastic book called Give and Take by Adam Grant. He's an economist at Wharton, and I love him, and I could probably do a whole talk about his theory of give and take. But I think give and take works well, especially for any of you that are not from the United States. Have you read it?
No, I just wanted to
Time.
tell you, like, feel free to use me, how I got this job as an
Oh,
example.
yes, let's tell that story. Actually, yes. Okay, so Give and Take is a great book, and it sort of spells out for those of you that are like, oh, I can't ask someone for something, and then those of you that might give too much, be like, I don't want to be a doormat. So again, he has an online quiz, and it's just a great book. If you are new to networking, new to American culture, American style networking, or even if you're American, you will love this book. So, all right, so I won't run through the rest of these. You can read it, except I am going to talk about personal board of directors. But yes, let me tell you a story. I think it's the reason why Sina and I are both standing in this room here right now. So 2 years ago, was it 2 years? Yep. I was at the National Postdoctoral Association annual meeting. It was in beautiful Grand Rapids, Michigan. And 2 or 3 of my postdocs, who were officers of our postdoc association, we were sitting in the airport, departing, going back to Dallas, and they saw some guy walk by, and they were like, hey, that's that guy from Japan. We really loved him. We want to talk to him. And so they ran off to talk to this guy from Japan, whatever. I thought it was a Japanese guy. I didn't know. I never saw him. But when I was writing my book, I needed to speak with someone who had an international perspective. I use a lot of case studies in the book and ask my postdocs, like, hey, you knew some guy in Japan? Can you put me in touch with him? Looked him up on LinkedIn. It was Sina. I wrote to Sina, and he wrote a fabulous first-person case study in the international perspective chapter of my scientist career guide. So thank you, Sina. And in the course of chatting with Sina and getting to know him, he said, hey, do you want to come to Okinawa and give a presentation on skills and strengths to my postdocs? I was like, yes, because I've never been to Japan, so that would be awesome. And it was awesome. And in the course of then knowing each other, when I knew that this job had opened up, told Sina about, no, you told me about it, right? I think, anyway, we had already made the relationship, right? We knew each other, and I wrote to a couple people that I knew here and said, 100% make sure this guy's application gets pulled out of the pile. Because even with academic jobs, when 400 applications are going in, right, some of the best people may never get pulled out of the pile just because of time. Did I miss anything about our story? Well, and one of my postdocs is in Okinawa, working in Sina's old job. So that's pretty cool. That's like tied up with a bow kind of networking. So personal board of directors is just something, again, I could do a whole hour on personal board of directors. But this is a phrase, first heard about it, Harvard Business Review, like maybe 10 years ago, but that all of us, whether it's career or not, need different people we can go to, right? If I have a friend who works in the insurance industry, I'm going to go to him or her if I have an insurance question, or someone who's a financial expert, someone who's a career advisor, or someone who is really good at travel or good with electronics to give me advice on different things I do, right? So you guys probably already do have personal boards of directors in your lives, but I want you to frame it a little bit now and think about, well, who is my personal board of directors in terms of my career, whether it's getting support right now, advocating for yourself in the day-to-day, or moving yourself forward. Okay, so you have your mentor, and it's no lie that there are sometimes very fractious mentor-student or mentor-postdoc relationships, but that doesn't have to be your only one. You should have a personal board of directors within the institution. You know, again, use people like Sina and I, or others on your committee, or other faculty. You know, again, expand your horizons a little bit with people. Getting the theme here? Okay, so finally, here's my LinkedIn demo. I hope I can do this really quickly. I just want to show you one tool. If you choose someone to throw out a name to me of a university that they've attended. Oh no, it's too big. We're going with University of Minnesota because it's right there, sorry. Because there's too many University of Texases. But, oh, dang it, didn't work. I need a little button that says see alumni. Oh no, LinkedIn changes all the time. Okay, I'm going to go with Boston University because that's mine. Hopefully this will work. Yeah, that's what I want. So for any institution, except University of Minnesota for some reason, you want to see alumni because you're going to get this search screen that can take you to look at 225,000 alumni from Boston University and where they work. Let me expand this out a little bit, making sure this is actually showing, and what they're doing, and more importantly, because let's say an institution that you attended has both undergrad and grad, you can't currently search this right now by PhDs. But if I wanted to study wanted to search by everyone who studied a certain subject, I might choose biology. And that brings it down to 13,000. And then, I don't know, let's say I want to look in, let's go to LA, just because it brings it down to 322. Now I can look at 300, and maybe geography is not important to me, right? You can use different parameters, but what I want to show you is how you can bring this down. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, Amgen, right? That brings up something, biology, Amgen, Los Angeles. That's a way to slice and dice it to find real life people that you could then eventually have an informational chat with. But what's great down here is it shows people and their photo, and that's why I do see it's important to have a profile photo on LinkedIn with a smile, and it'll tell me who I have connections in common with. But let me point something out to you. Melanie here, sorry, this is Sina's and not mine, but Sina has 2 connections in common with Melanie, 1 connection in common with Mark. So why didn't Melanie show up first? Because Mark obviously uses LinkedIn more. This is something I've learned about the secrets of LinkedIn's algorithm, that the people who show up first in these results are the people who are most active on LinkedIn and thus more likely to respond to you if you were to write to them.
Or have a premium account versus basic.
It's true. Don't buy a premium account yet. Okay. Right, so targeted application material. I'm just going to whiz through this because I want to get to the surviving and we're just the thriving part. Okay, so just tailor and target your materials. Just do it. I'm not kidding. Like if you're going to send your CV somewhere and it's a teaching position, make sure that teaching comes first above research on your CV. That little rule of thumb applies to everything you do. Okay, transferable skills. What are they? Do you have them? Yes? Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Sorry about that. Do you recommend putting a picture on our CV?
No, not in the United States.
Okay.
It might depend on other countries, but not in the U.S. So, because most people will, and there is argument in career circles that LinkedIn is replacing a lot of documents that people may go to look at that because it's a little more dynamic. It's more fun to use and people update it more. So I will confess, I go put all my publications right on LinkedIn, but I don't put them on my CV because it's just harder to do. So, okay, I'm going to gloss over transferable skills too because you do have them. Any single one of you guys have done, oh, you can see I didn't change the S from Australia when I last gave this talk. Every single one of you guys has done these things on the left. And that on the right is how you could write that up on a CV or resume to show your transferable skills, right? So, wow, there you go, transferable skills, boom. Okay, there are organizations that have surveyed students, grad students all over the world to say what would employers be looking for? This is not just beyond academia. I've talked to people in my own institution about academic searches that they've done, and they're like, yeah, of course, scientific expertise and the publications come first, but can they tell me about their science? Do I want to have him or her as a colleague in my department? You know, what's the proof that they can get along? Teamwork, interpersonal skills, understanding the environment, and then a little bit problem solving. But the number one thing that employers of all kinds say when they're interviewing someone or looking at a cover letter is the person who's applying doesn't seem to get what we do. So whether it's an academic department or a division or a non-academic job, know what it is and what you're getting into. So if you have not already taken advantage of opportunities to learn about explaining your research, doing elevator pitches or improv stuff or any of that science communication opportunity that you have. It's so hot right now, and it's so important because your audience is going to be different depending what kind of jobs you're looking for, and I would guess that most people in the room will be looking for sort of a combination or a couple different kinds of environments, and you're going to have to describe your science differently no matter what. So here's just some stuff that I really like. ASBMB has an online Art of Science Communication course that you can sign up for. Networking for Nerds, which I told you about, you can buy. The Alan Alda Center at Stony Brook in New York does a lot of boot camps and resources and things online. You can sign up. Okay, introverts. I love Susan Cain and her book Quiet, and she has a website called Quiet Revolution that can help people who tend to get more energized by solitude and being alone, learn how to function in environments where it is required to be extroverted. And then the cheeky scientist. I don't know, he's a little bit obnoxious, but there's some good resources with him. And again, you have to pay for Cheeky Scientist, and SINA offers a lot of free resources for you here at this institution. So just throwing it out there. But there's some stuff you can get for free. Okay, so don't ever take your PhD off your resume or CV. It's going to come out eventually. You can't hide it. All the publications that you have will show up eventually. So again, this comes back to understanding an organization and why you're applying. And if you've had chats or been connected to people in an organization, it should not be a surprise to them that a PhD would be applying for the job. And think about the fact, too, being underqualified, so you haven't worked out in the world, but this goes back to transferable skills, that there have been many things that you have done that equate to others who have perhaps left a bachelor's and been working for the last 7 to 10 years. Again, use your network to understand how to pitch whatever it is you're applying for and where. Okay, I'm just going to whiz through that. If you haven't already, do the Myers-Briggs Type Inventory or the Gallup Strengths Finder. Now, you can get both of them online. Sometimes you have to pay, but if you ever have opportunity to go to a workshop with these things, take advantage of it. And I already talked about searching job ads, not to apply, but just to see what's there. If you need to learn about how to speak better, I think I just said that incorrectly, speak good, you can go to courses. I love Twitter as a presence for putting out information that's important to me about graduate careers, whatever might be important to you, whether it's wellness or your specific science or science communication or whatever it may be. There may be social media for you, opportunities to write or just opportunities to be there and learn and get involved in organizations, and helping other people can help you. Okay, so now I finally move into the whole thriving part. Poor little Lulu down in the corner. Focus on the future and set aside any kind of, okay, so this is from the Academic Job Search Handbook. This very last quote here, this very last bullet point, is sort of saying that if you are leaving academia or even considering it a little bit, you know what, it is tough. Like Lulu, you've been training for years and years, and maybe you still would like to consider a job in academia, but it may not necessarily pan out. And I guess it's been happening for a long time, the opportunities are sort of dwindling down. So if you have put your energy into what the other options may be, it will help you, I guess, set aside some of those worries. So again, I'm trying to think of how I can frame this best for you. If you are anxious and unhappy, you are going to go nowhere. people know, just like when if you've been ever been with someone, okay, this is a dating metaphor, but someone that's too keen and you're not keen, you're just like, well, get away from me, right? People know when you are desperate or unhappy and you are not a good match for a job. Someone who's just, I need to get out of here because I can't stand my mentor. I need to get out of here because my experiments didn't work. I need to get out of here because my visa. You know, that is not going to get you a job. And there is a sixth sense that people have, that they just know that you have something too much at stake and you're not truly interested in the job. Same goes for any kind of networking that you have. That's why it's best to start it early when not a lot is at stake. Right? You can't go start networking with people at Gen Tech when you've just found a cool job at Gen Tech and you want to apply for it, because it's just so obvious that you are using those people. Again, back to that book, Give and Take. So start it early, start your thinking, build your network and your personal board so that when the time comes, you don't have to be like, Gen Tech person, please talk to me. Cover letters with too much me. Again, you're going to get good guidance on this from people like Sina, templates or one-on-one advising, and learning how to put these documents together. Really, a good cover letter should almost flow. It should be such a good match between you and whatever the opportunity is. It shouldn't be that difficult. And I guess really that's what this whole slide is about. Like, if it is that difficult, it's not the right path or place for you. So the remedy for this is, again, knowing about yourself, knowing the options in the playing field, and doing it early so that you have practice and facility. I see again and again, working right now with one of my fantastic graduate students. He's president of our consulting club, and he's been focused on getting a consulting or private equity job. He's a PhD scientist, but he has not had enough interview practice, but he's finally like got his mojo and he's in the zone. But it took like 3 or 4 phone interviews and not being invited to be flown out to a company for him to get comfortable. And he's like, you know what, that's just part of the game. That's just part of the process. So, you know, again, it's a real life example that I can think of that's happening right now with someone that I know. So these are 3 things that everyone, no matter what discipline, who's doing a PhD has, right? Perseverance, persistence, and being able to think. So if you apply that to your career, whether it's career that's happening right now or career on the horizon in the future, you know, there's no way you can't succeed. So this is the only kind of motivation you need. Like, no, this is not what I'm trying to say. It's not like, you guys probably aren't even old enough to remember this cat, but like when I was a kid, it was like on your binder, like your trapper keeper. Hang in there, baby. No, that's not going to work for you guys. Like, people may give you platitudes about like, be calm or just, you know, go with the flow, but it has to come from you taking action and ownership of the things that are happening to you. Anyone here, psychiatry, psychology, familiar with fixed versus growth mindset? Okay, I'm going to skip this. Although think about your 6-year-old self. They would say, you know what, your life right now is pretty cool. Like, you have your own kitchen, you get to eat whatever you want, you can drive a car. But fixed versus growth mindset is basically saying things are happening to me, or I can control what is happening around me. And that, again, brings me back to everything that I've been saying about you have to start this early. You know, get the wheel spinning, get the wheel slowly in motion about what your next steps might be. And you can't just assume that all kinds of things are going to come to you, right? Planned happenstance. Yes, things will come to you, but you've also got to put yourself out in that environment. I'm going to skip this and talk about this. Tom, again, from Sloan Kettering, put this together and said that, you know, as PhDs, can you think of yourself sometimes when we're down about one of these characters from Oz. And, you know, again, why do we lose heart? Why are we afraid to take career risks? Or, you know, why are we so fixated on saying, I am a PhD instead of I have a PhD? It's just part of the culture, right? But recognize that everyone thinks it and feels it. But this is what I wanted to show you guys. Anyone familiar with this experiment about learned helplessness? Again, it's not Lulu, thank God, but it's back to this sort of dog metaphor of the dog knew it. All it had to do was step over to get away from the electric shock, but it didn't. It was stuck. And that's what I see a lot happening with PhDs and postdocs sometimes, because you've been in a situation for so long that you may be a little bit in a fixed mindset and be like, no, it's in your grasp to be able to just step over and get away from that electric shock. You may choose to go back to it, and that's fine, but that will be your choice. Okay, so is the grass always greener? Maybe. Maybe. Tom made this slide, and I just have to share it with you. That, again, you think about someone who went right out of undergrad, 6 years later, they're a big bank vice president making $100K. Someone who majored in astrophysics, and is still like Big Bang Theory or Revenge of the Nerds. It's tough. It's tough for, I think, especially postdocs, because you've been at it so long, and you may be looking at peers who are on a parallel track that, are doing so much more. But what is more? What does more mean to you and to them? You can't make that direct comparison, because I love this column. So find the support where you can, right? Again, the personal board of directors. Tony Robbins. See, I want to be the Tony Robbins of like PhD careers. I will not walk on hot coals though. But find the cheerleaders, or if that's not your style, just find the quiet listening ear. You will know best, who is there for you. And that's something I wrote about in my Lulu article last week, was that start with a friend, then if you have to, go to a professional. And from there, go to the person or situation, the mentor, let's just say, that is, causing you stress. But remember, find the support where you can. Don't wait till the last minute. And remember that you need multiple career ideas and thoughts as you go forward. And that's it. So any questions for me? Because I know we're right on time for those of you that have to get back to the lab. Okay, if not, I will stand here for a little bit, and anyone wants to come up, please come chat.
Thank you so much.